Hi, I'm Nancy Kaufman. Just a little bit about me. This is my 40th year in the field of speech and language pathology with expertise in childhood apraxia of speech. As part of my weekly schedule, I've had the opportunity to work with children from all over the U.S. as well as from 11 other countries, implementing my methods, the Kaufman Speech to Language Protocol, known as the CCC-SLP, that helps children to become effective vocal communicators. So I only recently became aware that I had at least one child with SETBP1, of whom I worked with directly, and another of whom I was able to consult with his speech and language pathologist, who also implemented the CCC-SLP successfully as well. So these two parents invited me within days of each other to speak for this organization today, and now they have been introduced to each other, which has been really a wonderful outgrowth of this, and I'm just so honored to present. I'm going to talk about childhood apraxia of speech and other communication disorders in SETBP1. I want everyone to be aware that there are other known methods to help those with childhood apraxia of speech, CAS it's known as, and I will only be addressing the methods of which I am the author for today's presentation. Lindsay, are you going to hand it over to me to control?
Yep, you should already have it.
I'm not advancing. Oh, there we go. Good. So I'm just getting to know more about SETBP1, and I understand that there's a range of symptoms ranging from absent speech to expressive language delays, mild to severe intellectual disabilities, autism or autism's traits, developmental delays, and ADHD. So my focus today is going to be upon the communication disorders. I'm not easily advancing.
Okay, can you try clicking in the middle of the slide with your mouse?
Okay, so is that how I should? Okay, good. So first we're going to talk about speech motor skills. Everybody's very aware of gross motor, fine motor, and now we also have to talk about speech motor skills because speech is a motor skill. And it is a behavior that involves the mechanics of talking, the integrity of the nerves to innervate the speech muscles, moving the articulators of the jaw, tongue, lips, soft palate, to coordinate respiration too, in order to produce and combine consonants and vowels to form syllables and thus words. And as you can understand, it's a very complex skill. So I was thinking about the children that I know, and there are two populations who exhibit speech motor challenges that are frequently observed in SETBP1, from what I understand. So there, some of them are children with autism spectrum disorders, and they may also just have traits thereof. And the big thing about them is that we're talking about children with ASD who are minimally vocal. The other population are those with childhood apraxia of speech, CAS. In autism spectrum disorders, there's an estimated 30% of children who are nonverbal communicators. Some children with ASD actually do have childhood apraxia of speech, and then we're going to talk more about the definition of that disorder. Others may also have unintelligible speech, but it's really not because of a speech motor condition. Some children have a lot of jargon, and they might just sound like, and it really is how we sound to them because they really can't make sense out of what we're saying. And when they listen to a lot of conversation and try to mimic it, that's what it sounds like. So you might come across a child with ASD that has a lot of unintelligible jargon, but it doesn't mean that they have necessarily have a speech motor condition. But those kinds of issues are more rooted in faulty processing and comprehension of language. And then there are those with ASD who have immediate or delayed echolalia. So immediate echolalia would be a child who you might say to them, "What's your name?" And they may say back, "What's your name?" Or they may use a memorized script to communicate. They may say to you, hug you, or hold you. And that just means they want you to hug them, or they want you to hold them. But those are the words that were said to them when the hugging or the holding happened. And so what they do is use that actual script from somebody else in order to communicate. For those children that also have the language issues, some of the best ways to help them is through ABA programs, Applied Behavioral Analysis programs, and especially those that have applied verbal behavior. And we have an ABA program here at my center. The nice thing about it is that it's, the director is a speech and language pathologist who's also a board certified behavior analyst. It's not very easy to find ABA programs that have good quality and that have speech and language pathologists working along with their staff, so that would be an important consideration. In childhood apraxia of speech, we're talking about difficulty executing and or sequencing the oral motor movements necessary to produce and combine consonants and vowels to maintain the motor plans of words on volitional muscle control, resulting in errors in speech sound production and prosody. A more detailed definition can be found at asha.org, and that was in 2007. So there hasn't been a gold standard evaluation method, including my own. I have a test that looks at childhood apraxia of speech that helps all of us truly identify those with CAS. Dr. Edie Strand, she has the most current evaluation tool. It's called the DEMS. The thing about evaluation tools is that in terms of any behavior that we're looking at, tests are really just a way to take data on the behavior. It's really going to be up to the speech and language pathologist to look at the data that we receive from an evaluation tool and then determine whether or not a child has a specific condition. So in this case, in terms of CAS, here are some of the characteristics. You might be thinking about your own children and whether or not they have some of these characteristics. So these are children with a limited repertoire of vowels, less differentiation between vowel productions and vowel errors, especially distortions. Now I have to say that not all vowel errors have to do with CAS. Some children have that generalized hypotonicity. They have very weak musculature. They may have weak oral musculature, and therefore their vowels may be distorted in isolation. If vowels are distorted in isolation, they're going to be distorted in connected speech, and those aren't vowel errors that have to do with sequencing movement. But if you can produce vowels in isolation very well, and then you start to collapse them in connected speech and they become distorted, those vowel errors would be more consistent with childhood apraxia of speech. These are children with a variability of speech sound errors. They may have some unusual idiosyncratic errors that sometimes defy transcription. And they have errors that increase with the length or complexity of an utterance, such as a multisyllabic or phonetically challenging word. And depending upon the level of severity, children may be able to produce a target word accurately in one context, but may not be able to do the same in a different context. They have more difficulty with self-initiated utterances as compared to overlearned, automatic, or modeled utterances. And we learn this a lot from adults who might have suffered an illness, accident, or injury and lost the ability to speak. Very often, sometimes those people can swear with total accuracy, but if you ask them to say those same words on direct imitation, they might not be able to do it. With children, hopefully they're not swearing, but some of their automatic utterances may be something like no, or wow, or hey, or some kind of exclamation. So those might be very easy for them to say, while other utterances are not. And then there's this strange thing called diadochokinesis, but really it's the ability to sequence the syllables of patika in a rapid manner. Patika, patika, patika. So in children who are 4 or older, if they struggle with this ability, that could be a sign that they have childhood apraxia of speech. And then prosody. So many children with apraxia of speech have a very slow rate of speaking. They may have timing deficits in the duration of sounds. They may have unusual pauses between or within syllables or words. And so they can sound very choppy, kind of not fluent. They may have equal stress. and they may also have a monotone quality to their speech. And at some point, they might have groping or observable physical struggle for articulatory position. And we'll talk more about that later. And also, many children with CAS could also have an oral apraxia. Basically, what we're talking about is, for example, a child that can understand the words "stick out your tongue," but when when you say "stick out your tongue," they can't do it. But if you held a lollipop in front of them, and they could stick out their tongue to lick the lollipop. So they're able to stick out their tongue, just not on direct imitation or direct voluntary muscle control. So there could be an oral apraxia as well. So what do we do for kids who are minimally vocal, or I'm going to say the word vocal today, but my methods, the KSLP, are very much rooted in the behavioral literature, or the applied behavioral analysis literature, and more specifically verbal behavior. And so the word verbal behavior means any type of communication, where the term vocal is really talking about the act of speaking. So I'm going to use the term vocal when we're talking about speech disorders. So there are many children, especially those with autism spectrum disorders, who are minimally vocal, and many of them don't even know how to imitate, even gross motor imitation, or certainly not vocal imitation. And that's a huge thing. We've got to get kids knowing how to imitate. One of the things we do is called rapid motor imitation antecedents. And I'm going to actually show you some videos of this, because it's easier to show than to tell. But basically what we're talking about is getting children to imitate gross motor movements. Let's say something like clapping hands or patting our knees. But we're going to have to hand over hand help them to do the motor movement at first, till we can fade our cues and that they're doing the motor movements themselves to imitate us. But we're going to move from gross motor to fine motor. So we're going to get into some movements of our hands and fingers. We're going to move back to gross oral motor movements. We're going to get into just opening mouths, or sticking out tongues, or smacking lips, or something like that. And then we're going to get to vocal imitation, the actual imitation of isolated vowels and consonants, and even syllables and words. So it gives these children the momentum to go from gross to fine to oral to vocal. And so by the time we get to them actually imitating a sound, like say ah, they're right there with it, because they've had that momentum going with the other motor skills. And another thing that we do here at the Kaufman Children's Center is called Sign to Talk. And I am one of the co-authors of this method, and Tamara Casper is the other author, just a brilliant speech and language pathologist. But it's a method to bridge sign language to vocal skills, and especially, again, for autism spectrum disorders, and I will be showing you some video of how this works. But basically, we're going to teach sign language to the children, but the way that it's done, if it's done properly, and it takes a lot of technique, can get them into the ability to produce at least word approximations or even full words. And once we've got that ability to imitate going again, we can start shaping consonants and vowels into words and making them functional. Another thing that we do for those who are minimally vocal are elements of what's called oral placement therapy, OPT. These are speech and language pathologists. They're highly trained through an organization called Talk Tools. We're only talking about using tools. So we're not talking about the other types of therapy that are typical for feeding therapy. This is just to gain some vowels and consonants into the repertoires of children who hardly have any. And we're going to use some tools inside their mouth to help them to produce vowels and consonants and get them into their repertoire. One of the authors of some of these tools is Renee Loy Hill, who is a speech and language pathologist, and she has these tools called apraxia shapes, which you're going to see in my video presentation. And finally, we get to my methods, the KSLP. Basically, we're going to take those vowels and consonants, we're going to shape them to gain successive approximations toward perfect adult target words by simplifying the motor plans of words. And we're only going to simplify words and we're only going to teach approximations if the child does not have all the vowels and consonants within important words to teach them in their repertoire. And I'm going to show you a lot about the KSLP methods. And I'm so excited because the two boys, both named John, had done so well with these methods and are really excellent communicators. And we're going to show you those boys as well. All right, so in order to show some of these techniques, I had to show you videos of children who do not necessarily have a diagnosis of SETBP1. And it's interesting to listen to Dr. Chung because I'm guessing that there are so many more children right here within our center who have this disorder and they don't know it, they don't have the genetic information. So I'm really hoping that this helps to spur on more and more families and children getting evaluated genetically and through the new types of methods that they have to be more specific. So this little girl is in our ABA program, and this is an example of rapid motor imitation antecedent. I have it in slow motion. Are you seeing it in real time? I can't hear it either. The technician is moving from gross motor movements to fine motor to gross oral motor to vocal movements, and she's actually then coming out with the vocal skill of saying ah. This is the same child. She's now going to be making approximations and labeling some of her highly preferred items and some members of her family. The technician is going to use some letters of the alphabet as a cue so that when she puts up the letter O, it helps this little girl to know that she's supposed to say O. Or she might put up a different letter and the child has the idea of the sound letter association cues. Let's see if it'll play. This little girl's now being able to put the G and the O together and to say go. And then when she says go, she gets to be pulled down the hall. And it works out well.
Oh, me! Go, go! Here we go! Beep, beep! Go.
Okay. So that was starting with rapid motor imitation, and then how once she started to imitate, we got her being able to say a word and be able to manipulate her environment, say go and get a chance to have a ride. So here's we're going to talk about sign language as a bridge to vocal communication. We don't teach signs because we want the child to be a signer. We teach signs so that they bridge to the child's ability to speak. So the first thing that we do when we're going to talk about teaching signs is we're going to follow the child's lead, and we need to discover what do they love, what are their highly preferred items and activities, and maybe even foods and drinks. While the child is showing motivation for that item or activity, we need to playfully block them from obtaining it. I know it sounds kind of mean, but it's not. But we're going to help to shape their hands to make the sign for it. So let's say the child's reaching for a cookie. We're going to block the child from gaining that cookie. We're going to take their hands. We're going to help them to make the sign for cookie. And we're going to say the word cookie 3 times in a natural voice. Cookie, cookie, cookie. And then we're going to give them a little piece of cookie. Let's say that the child wants to even do something like jump on the trampoline. We're going to playfully block the trampoline. We're going to take the child's hand. We're going to help to make the sign for jump. We're going to say the word jump 3 times and then allow the child to jump for a little while, but then take them off. They're going to want to scramble back on, but before they do, we block again. We take their hands. We help them to make the sign, and we say the word 3 times, that same word. This is what we're hoping for, that our hands can come toward the child, but they know that they're supposed to make the sign, and they can make it before we even have to hand over hand help them to do it. And if that's the case, then we're going to let them have a bigger chunk of cookie, or we're going to let them jump on that trampoline for a lot longer. All right, but we're still going to take them off and still going to entice them with the cookie. What we want to have happen over lots of trials and lots of time is for the child to actually walk in from another room and sign to gain access to their preferred items and activities. In which case they just get bigger and better reinforcement. However, what we're really looking for after a while is for the child to sign and to try to say the word that was always paired with that sign and with that ability to gain access to the item or activity. So you've always been saying cookie, cookie, cookie while shaking hands. The child may go ahead and make that motor movement for the word cookie and say cookie or something close. And if they do, they get reinforced right away and with large quantities and lots of fun. But let's say that they're coming from another room and they are signing, and that's been wonderful, and we've been reinforcing them, but they never then move to the ability to make the vocalization. I'm not advanced, there we go. If they don't vocalize along with the sign, then we actually have to stop reinforcing just the sign only. And we act like we don't know what they're trying to communicate. And it's a hard thing to do, to act like you don't know what they're communicating. But what we want to have happen is for the children to get kind of upset enough to vocalize with their sign. Hey, look, I'm signing and you're not listening to me. They might vocalize, and if they vocalize, even if it's a protest vocalization like, then we're going to reinforce them again. And what they're going to know is, oh, I have to vocalize while I make this sign. And then we can start shaping that vocalization into the approximation, maybe for the word cookie, maybe for the word jump. We have to figure out what could they then do as an approximation for those words. If the child never vocalizes, then we're going to go to rapid motor imitation antecedent again and see if we can get that imitation up and running. So here's a little boy who's in our ABA program. He's working with his speech and language pathologist, Bree. And you're going to notice that she's going to prompt him. She's going to provide him with a cue to be able to say make the sign for the word swing as a verb. So he wants to swing, he's going to sign swing, but he still needs help to do it at this point.
Swing. Swing. All right, nice job, Chase.
And the next is where she's not going to prompt at all, but wait. And then he makes a sign for swing independently, and he's able to swing.
Don't cry.
Swing right now. Swing! All right, let's swing.
Okay. So we worked on that sign to talk type of programming with this little boy. And once he has many signs, he can use them certainly for requesting, and that's the number one goal, is to get children requesting, just like that child vocally requested go. We want to get those requests, but also once you can sign, you can label. So you can do other modalities. You can label items, you can answer questions. So she's showing him a picture for him to label, and he's labeling with the sign. You could also even ask a question, hey, which one of these things is something that people can ride in it and you can fly in it? And he could still answer with a sign even though he's not vocal just yet.
Airplane. Bed. Nice.
So those are his labels. And then we're going to get more and more into the ability to produce more specific sounds. This is this little boy with Carrie Peterson. Carrie Peterson is the BCBA, who's also a speech and language pathologist. And she is the director of all of our autism programs here at the Kaufman Children's Center. She's using a tool. It happens to be a horn. But for example, if you're going to work on, and this just happened to be available and useful for this little boy, but you could use a straw or a small cylinder to put inside a child's mouth to try to gain the vowel oo. And you can see the letter U that would be used as a phonics cue as a sound letter association.
Ooh. No, round lips. Ooh. Good. Round lips like you're blowing horn. Ooh. Yeah, that was beautiful. Round lips like you're blowing horn. Ooh, good. Look at that. Round lips like you're blowing horn. Ooh. Nope, round lips like you're blowing horn. Round lips like you're blowing. Ooh. Beautiful. Give me 10s. Nice job. Hooray. That was terrific. Best ever. Here's some beads.
Okay, and then some more tools. These are Renee Roy Hill's Apraxia shapes. They're just different pieces of plastic that are different colors to put, and you don't see it because she's just going to show him these, but you can insert them between the child's lips for or for b. And I want to make sure that, especially for speech and language pathologists, that when we're teaching children who are minimally vocal, that we don't want to add a schwa. A schwa is an We don't want to add any vowel right away. If we're teaching M, we teach we don't teach ma. If we're teaching b, we don't. If we're teaching b, we don't teach ba. Because if we have the word, let's say mom, and he's learned the M as ma, he's going to say ma'am. So we have to be very, very careful about our initial ways to teach children isolated vowels and consonants. So here she is using some tools and some letter associations for M and B.
This one says, you got it. Nice going. I know it's an M. You like that one, huh? This one says, you got it. And this one says, B. Good. This one says, B. Good going. Let's hold them up. You ready? We're going to do some practicing. Here we go. Watch me. Watch me. Chase, look. You ready? Look at. Good. B. Good. Good. B. Look here. Chase, hands down. Look at me. Watch. B. Good. Now, those sound really great. Let's try.
Now that he has an and he has an oo, let's try to combine those, and we're going to produce the word moo. And when we show a child a picture of an animal and we're trying to get an animal sound, we need to either say, what does a blank say, or a cow says, and then let the child fill in the blank, so that they don't label a cow as a moo. That's just technical, but it's a good point to know.
Cow says moo. Cow says moo. Wow, that was good. Cow says moo.
Okay, so this child progressed and progressed on his consonants, his vowels, his ability to combine them, and now he can say hi, and then hi stays constant. So hi is a pivot word in the KSLP methods, and we're going to talk about pivot words and phrases. So hi stays constant, and then he's going to do hi plus somebody familiar in his life. And he's at the table, and we're using pictures, but we certainly work on these salutations in the real world. He is in a classroom situation here at our center. He also has pull-out sessions as well, and we like to get this right away into the natural environment.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
Good job. Hi, Mom.
Hi.
You got it. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Abby.
Go. Hi, Grandma.
Hi. Hi, Grandma.
And the same thing with the word go. Go stays constant, so it's a pivot word, and then he gets to pair it with a verb.
Good. Look, we're going to say, go eat.
Go eat.
Good. Can you sit up and say it nicely? Go eat.
Go eat.
You got it. Go swing.
Go swim.
You are so awesome. Go potty.
Go party.
Yay, Chip.
Okay, so we go on and on into phrases and sentences, comments and questions, and Now that little boy came into us without any verbal skills, and he was already turning 5. So as Dr. Chung was explaining, don't lose hope, but it really has to do with techniques and who is teaching and how are they teaching and what are they teaching and what do they know about behavior analysis and how to use the methods that are appropriate to make changes in behaviors. Either we're trying to establish a new behavior, or we're trying to improve upon a behavior that already exists, or we need to eliminate some behaviors, but we need to know a lot about behavior change. Okay, so for those with a childhood apraxia of speech, or those who can produce vowels and consonants in isolation, but they struggle to maintain production within a context. So as I said before, I've been made aware that I know 2 children who have been diagnosed with SETBP1 and who have learned to be effective vocal communicators with the KSLP methods. I'm so excited about that, and I want to talk more about the KSLP. As I mentioned before, there are certainly other evidence-based methods for CAS. The KSLP method has been very effective for at least 2 children that we know, and most likely many more that we didn't know had SETBP1. The KSLP is rooted in behavioral shaping techniques, which I just talked about, and the principles of motor learning. Motor plans of words are initially simplified and shaped toward perfection through reinforcing successive approximations. So just for an example, let's say that the child really loves cookies. They don't have a cup in their repertoire and they're not stimulable for it. No matter what you do, they just don't have that cup. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at that word and we're going to change it, but we're going to change it the way that typically developing children would typically change a cup if it wasn't in their repertoire. And so these are called phonological processes. So we're going to change the word cookie to tootie. We're going to see if the child can imitate tootie. And we're always going to model the word correctly. Hey, look at the cookie. Can you say tootie? Yes, here's your cookie. We're going to model it correctly. It may be easier for the child to implement something called fronting using that T for a K. What if they're not successful with that? We might want to try dootie. If they do have the K in their repertoire, but they can't co-articulate it with the E, because being able to say K alone is easy, but to say key is not, then we might have to reconfigure the word and say cook-e. And they may be able to do that, in which case we're never going to accept anything lower when they're talking about cookies or wanting to ask for them or wanting to comment on them. Nothing lower than cook-e. And when they do it fast enough and become more automatic, they won't have a vocal break. It will be cookie. All right. So the very lowest approximation for any word would be just the main vowel, e. And we're going to continuously work toward perfection of each of these words. We're never going to stop, but we need to give these children a way to communicate with better approximations than what they are attempting on their own. So I talked about the KSLP being rooted in applied verbal behavior or behavior strategies. And if you are watching somebody implement the KSLP or other treatment approaches, these are things that are important to find out, to look for. One of them is pairing and establishing motivation. So remember how we followed the child's lead and we know what's very highly preferred by them. We want to have all of those things available. So we're going to pair therapy materials with highly preferred items and activities. We need to make sure that we define the speech and language goals, implement shaping techniques, and errorless teaching means cueing before failure. We need to fade our cues so that the children's last responses are as independent as possible. We need to make sure that they're getting reinforced for each and every attempt if that's what they need, or make sure that when they do make an error that we correct it in the appropriate way so that their last response is as close to the target as possible. And we need practice schedules and practicing new skills in the natural environment. I'm going to have to speak a little faster because we need to wrap up. So let's see what I can do to make this a little shorter. These are some words that we can teach. In the KSLP, there's 5 lists of single words. One of them is syllable shaped, so CV means words like mama, dada, papa. CV means words like hi, no, bye, to. And the vowel change words are words where the consonants stay the same, but just the vowel change, mommy, daddy, puppy. Simple bisyllabics are the consonants and the vowel change, happy, bunny, tubby. And even 3-syllable words like banana, potato, tomato. So we do those different syllable-shaped words. We want to give them a list of common nouns to work on. We want to give them a list of functional requesting words or manding words. These are single words that manipulate the environment, like open or up or here, or how about telling us what to do, like come, or even something like watch me or draw. We're gonna also teach favorites. We need a list of favorite foods, drinks, toys, activities, places, people, pets, names, favorite characters. Those are the words that we're going to have to work on best approximations, because typically they're very random and they're very difficult. And then high frequency words that just don't follow any of the other lists, even things like please and thank you, or even exclamations, little linking words that we're working on for grammar. All right. We want to make sure that if we're teaching signs or words that we actually don't teach more, want, please, help, all done and again, because those words in and of themselves on their own don't give the listener any information. If the child signed or said more when they walked in my room, I wouldn't know what they want. They may scroll to want or please, I still don't know. So initially, we're going to teach a one-on-one match for highly preferred items and activities. Cookie to get a cookie, jump to get to jump. And then we can put 2 words, if they can put 2 words together, these words might be more appropriate, but it's even better to teach them some attributes like color words to describe the objects that they want. And then what word combinations? Here are some pivot phrases where one word stays constant. We talked about hi and go with a little boy that was working with his therapist. And then even phrases, I want, I need, I want to verb, can I have, let me. Come blank with me. It makes it very social, where they only have to change up 1 word. Everything else is automatic, so they don't have to work so hard to put some phrases together. And then we're going to get into telegraphic language, maybe teaching them to say eat apple once they know apple, or I eat apple, and then put in the article. Also teaching telegraphic language of naming action. Boy eat apple, rather than the boy is eating an apple. We'll get there, and we need to teach syntax and morphology, but they're not ready to increase the motor plans with so much detail right away. And then scripting. Once we can anticipate what a child is trying to say, we want to help them to say it. So children that are just giving you signs or gestures, we want to figure out what are they trying to say, and then help them with a pivot word or phrase. And that's really important to do. Okay. So here are the 2 children, and this is the end of my part of the conference. They both coincidentally are named John, and they both have characteristics of childhood apraxia of speech, and they both did very well with the KSLP method. So John O, I just was able to see him again face to face. I was in Houston just a couple weeks ago and meet his mother as well. So this little boy, I consulted with a speech and language pathologist who I'm very familiar with. Her name is Nicole Devins from the Caruth Center in Houston, Texas. It's another private practice very much like mine. He started working with her at 3 years, 5 months on reduplicated syllables like mama, dada. He's a smaller child, and so he doesn't look like his age necessarily. You're going to see him at 5 years, 5 months working on bisyllabic phrases, final and F, and he's going to ask to play with a specific toy. John also has hypernasality, air escaping through the nasal passages, which can interfere with speech intelligibility. His parents are looking into, and I think they might have found that he has insufficient velopharyngeal closure, and that will require maybe even surgery to make sure that the soft palate is making good contact with the pharyngeal wall so that there's not that escape of air. But you should always talk to your ear, nose, and throat physician. So here's our videos of John at 3.5 and then to 5.5, and then you're going to see him at age 11.
Dada.
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 Who is it?
Mama.
Dada.
Papa.
Dada. That's right. Who is it? Da. Dada.
Dada.
Good job. It's Dada.
Oh.
Horse. What does a horse say? Neigh, neigh.
Nana.
Neigh, neigh.
Nana.
Good. Neigh, neigh.
Nana.
What does a horse say?
Apple.
Neigh, neigh.
Nana.
What does a horse say?
Nana.
Good job. What does a horse say?
Nana.
Good job. Horse says neigh, neigh. Here we go. Honey pot.
Honey.
Pot. I need to hear your big boy voice.
Pony.
Bunny hop.
And here he is at age 11. I can't hear any audio right now.
What else did you enjoy about the choir concert?
I sang
And what else?
9 songs.
9 songs. That's a lot of songs. Which one was your favorite?
Let Snow and African Noel.
What else did you
I'm
enjoy
trying
about
to-
the choir concert?
I'm trying to advance. Okay, and then John, as I did this really quickly, he is a child that I had the opportunity to work with here at my center. And let's just go to him as a little guy, and then you're going to.
All right, we're going to take this out.
Take.
Yeah, and it's going to knock down those signs. Do you remember when we played with this before? I
have
ch-
to take.
at.
Home.
And now in here, train. Do it again. Train. That sounds like a train. Do you sit down on the couch?
Yeah.
I
I
sit
down.
on the.
I'm going to advance this, and this is John at age 8 years.
Can you tell me who's in your family?
Me, Mommy, Daddy, Wyman,
And
Emily.
Emery. Can you tell me what your favorite food is?
My favorite food is spaghetti, tomatoes, and
Asparagus.
asparagus.
You like Brussels?
I'm going to advance this as well. All right, and there's more information on the KSLP methods through Northern Speech, and there are 2 webinars through Apraxia Kids. If you want to know anything about Childhood Apraxia Speech, it's very important to know apraxia-kids.org organization. They have webinars and literature and genetics information all on that site. And I just want to close with saying that as speech and language pathologists, we are some of the first professionals to notice dysmorphic features in the children we serve. And although medical referrals are typically the role of the pediatricians, we should not shy away from making the recommendation for genetic testing or bringing our concerns to the pediatricians. So it's our hope to identify more children with SETBP1 early and to understand best practices to treat their communicative challenges. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have been invited to speak today.
Thank you so much, Nancy. All of the families on the line, if there was anything that you felt like you missed, you wanted to send, we are going to share the slide deck at the end of the presentation, so don't be too nervous. And now I want to open it up to everybody for questions. So is there anybody that's got a question for Nancy? I have one that came in through chat, and that is, what are the best things parents without SLP backgrounds can do to help their kids?
Well, without any SLPs working with them?
Sorry, they just clarified. They said in addition to an SLP.
In addition, okay. So I did have a video clip of John's parents working with him and me coaching. And so we really want to coach parents through play. And if you remember some of those pivot words and phrases, those are the things that we would want to help the children to produce. In the natural environment, we want to encourage them to do their single word requesting, even if it's with their best approximations. Knowing what's in their consonant and vowel repertoire and trying to shore up more into their vowel and consonant repertoire. And then looking at their favorites list and figuring out what are their best approximations for those things so that they can start asking for them, even if it's just with single words in their natural environment. I really think that it's important to work through play if you're parents. It gives you a lot of nice time together, and that you're not necessarily using therapy materials. Although some children they love therapy materials and they might bring them to their parents, but we want to really make it fun and then give the children our complete and 100% attention.
So another follow-up question to that is if their child is working with multiple SLPs, should the SLPs be doing the same things with that child or different things?
It's a very good question. I think it's very difficult to coordinate different SLPs. They have different styles. They have different backgrounds of information and education. One of the things that is important, though, is if the child's working with more than one SLP and they are providing cues, that they try to use the same cueing system, especially for visual hand cues, because otherwise it can get confusing to the child as to what cue they're being shown and to know what they're being asked to produce. Sometimes if the child has speech and language challenges, one speech pathologist might be designated to work on the speech motor aspects of communication, and the other might be working more on the receptive and expressive language aspects of their communication.
Do you have any advice on how to evaluate whether an SLP is a good quality or a good match for a child?
Well, I think that you want to really listen to your child and watch the children's behavior about attending speech sessions. It's our role, the SLP's role, to make sure that the session is fun and that we know a lot about the child's preferences and making sure that we're the giver of good things, you know, and pairing the work with fun and exciting toys and activities. You want to look at your SLP and make sure that they're really paying attention to the child's needs. Do they need more reinforcers? Do they need different types of toys? Some children aren't interested in toys at all. And we're going to have to figure out what is interesting to that particular child and then provide things that are more interesting. Some children only like linear things. They might only like belts and sticks, or some children may like goop or something that we wouldn't necessarily think of providing for them. So I think we have to make sure that we're really knowing the children and what their highly preferred items and activities are, knowing what level of speech motor skills they're at, and working a little above their level so that they have something to work toward and know how to keep motivated and happy.
Thank you. Do you have any recommendations for any apps or online games for kids with CAS?
I don't have them specifically, but I know there are lists of them on apraxia-kids.org, on the Apraxia Kids website.
And then do you have any opinions or recommendations on the optimal amount of speech therapy per week or per session that a child should be in?
That's also a good question. I think there's some of those recommendations on Apraxia Kids as well. But you know, the way that I answer that is it's about quality over quantity. So if you have a speech and language pathologist who really understands childhood apraxia of speech in this case, And Apraxia Kids also has a registry of speech and language pathologists that they feel have at least enough educational background to be effective for CAS. But I just, the question has left my mind. Can you say it again? Oh, quality. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, if you have really good quality therapy, you want to have at least twice a week, half-hour one-on-one sessions. If you can get therapy every day and it's quality and the children are very happy and interested to attend, I would get it as much as possible.
I have another question. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what's the impact of the child using like an iPad or something, pressing buttons that the iPad itself gives the child a voice?
Well, if you're asking, does an AAC device interfere with a child's motivation to talk? The literature suggests that it actually should be helpful to vocal skills. Just like how teaching sign language is a nice bridge to vocal skills, so can AAC devices be the same. In SLP sessions, if the child is using a device, we want to make sure that they are working just as hard on vocal skills along with the device.
All right. Thank you so much, Nancy, for your presentation and for answering all of our questions.